Welcome to the session on fundamental duties of Indian citizens. Before going to the topic, let us discuss what is a constitution. A constitution is a living document and it is an instrument which makes the government system work. A constitution sets out the framework and important functions of the government. It also explains the basic structure of the political system. It defines the powers of the various organs of the state, explains their responsibilities, regulates the relationship with each other and with the people. In my opinion, a constitution is a holy book to an Indian citizen. Yes, in India, we have people belonging to different religion. For a Hindu, Bhagavad Gita is a holy book. He strictly follows the principles that is said in Bhagavad Gita. A Muslim follows the principles that is said in his holy book Quran. A Christian follows the principles that is said in Holy Bible. In such a way, each and every Indian citizen, irrespective of their religion, must strictly adhere to the principles that is explained in the Constitution. A modern state or a country without a constitution is unimaginable. It is rightly said by Jelnik, a state without a constitution would not be a state but a regime of anarchy. Let us see the historical background of the Indian Constitution and its development through the years. The first step was the Regulating Act of 1773. By the Regulating Act of 1773, the British Parliament took the control and regulated the affairs of the English East India Company in India. Then came the Pitt's India Act of 1784. It distinguished the commercial and political functions of the company. The Charter Act of 1830 terminated the company's monopoly over Indian trade and it was open to all British subjects. By the Charter Act of 1833, the Governor-General of Bengal became the Governor-General of India. By the Charter Act of 1853, the legislative and executive functions of the Governor-General's councils were separated. The Government of India Act of 1858, the most important act, replaced the company's rule by the Crown's rule in India. The power of British Crown were to be exercised by the Secretary of State for India. Then came the Indian Councils Act of 1861. The act for the first time introduced the Indian representation in the institutions like Viceroy's Executive and Legislative Council. The Indian Council Act of 1892 introduced indirect elections. In fact, the Constitution's long history stretches to over 40 years before its enactment, going all the way to the Minto-Mardy reform of 1909. This law, for the first time, brought Indians into governance at central and provincial level. The Montagu-Chelmsford Act of 1990 was a vast improvement on the 1909 Act. The passage of the Government of India Act 1935, much of which found its way into the present Constitution, finally came the Indian Independence Act. Now, let us look into the framing of the Indian Constitution. The Constitution of India was framed by a Constituent Assembly set up under the Cabinet Mission Plan of 1946. The Assembly consisted of 389 members representing the provinces, states, the Chief Commissioners' provinces and Balochistan. The Assembly held its first meeting on December 9, 1948 and elected Mr. Sachidanand Sinha as the Provisional President. On December 11, 1946, The Assembly elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as its permanent chairman. The strength of the Assembly was reduced to 299, representing the provinces, and 70 representing the states following the withdrawal of the Muslim League members after the partition of the country. The strength of the Assembly was reduced, so the Constituent Assembly set up 13 committees for framing the Constitution. On the basis of the reports of these committees, a draft of the Constitution was prepared by the 7-member drafting committee under the chairmanship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The draft Constitution was published in January 1948, and people were given 8 months to discuss the draft and propose amendments. After the draft was discussed by the people, the press, the provisional assemblies and the Constituent Assembly, in the light of the suggestions received, the same was finally adopted on November 26, 1949 and was signed by the President of the Assembly. On 26 January 1950, our Constitution This is a group photo taken by the members of Constituent Assembly. To our pride, there was some women representation also. Dr. Rajendra Prasad having a look into the Constitution of India, and this is a picture which shows the members of the Constituent Assembly signing. Jawaharlal Nehru signing the Constitution. Dr. Ambedkar handing over the Constitution to Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Ours is the longest Constitution in the world, and it was not typed and printed, but it was a handwritten Constitution. The calligraphy work was done by Prem Bihari Narayan Rasia. He was the man who literally wrote the Indian Constitution. This contains the signature of the members of the Constituent Assembly. This is the picture of the Indian Constitution, and here I have given the link of Constitution of India, and if you click on this, it will take you to the My Government portal, where you can see the entire text of the Indian Constitution. And this again is a picture from the Indian Constitution, and this is the preamble of the Constitution of India. Again I have given a link. So we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this Constitution. Now let us see about the inclusion of fundamental duties in the Indian Constitution. Students, when the Constitution was adopted in the year 1949, Part 3 spoke on the fundamental rights alone. So initially fundamental duties were not included in the Constitution. Later, the government set up a committee under the chairmanship of Swaran Singh. and based on the recommendations given by that committee, the fundamental duties of the citizens were added by the 42nd Amendment in the year 1976. So in the year 1976 only, a code of 10 fundamental duties were included in the Indian Constitution. The committee also suggested that the government has to take steps to ensure that each and every individual do not overlook his or her duties while exercising the fundamental rights. So, in the year 1976, fundamental duties were included under Chapter 4A by Article 51A. So, by adding these fundamental duties into our Constitution, we came in line with Article 29(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and also with provisions in several modern constitutions of other countries. Friends, actually we took this concept of fundamental duties from the former USSR. The fundamental duties are also essentially taken from the rich Indian tradition, mythology, religion and practice. As I told already, when the fundamental duties were included, it was 10 in number. Later, by the 86th Amendment in the year 2002, the 11th duty was added. So at present, we have 11 fundamental duties. So dear friends, the fundamental duties were incorporated in Part 4A by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, and at present we have 11 fundamental duties under Article 51A, and all these statutory duties are enforceable by law. So the concept or the idea behind the incorporation of the fundamental rights are to emphasize the obligation of the citizen in exchange of the comprehensive fundamental rights enjoyed by them. Let us look into the 11 fundamental duties incorporated into the Constitution of India. The first fundamental right: abide by the Indian Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. Friends, it is the duty of every citizen to respect the ideals which include liberty, justice, equality, fraternity and institutions, namely executive, the legislature and the judiciary. Hence, all of us are supposed to maintain the dignity of a constitution by not indulging in any activities which violate them in letter and spirit. It also states that if a citizen by any overt or covert act shows disrespect to the Constitution, the national anthem and the national flag, it would spell doom to all our rights and very existence as citizens of a sovereign nation. The second duty is to cherish and follow the noble ideals that inspired the national struggle for freedom. The citizens of India must cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired the national struggle for freedom. These ideals were those of building a just society and a united nation with freedom, equality, non-violence, brotherhood and world peace. If the citizens of India remain conscious of and committed to these ideals, will be able to rise above the various separatist tendencies raising their ugly heads now and then here and there. The third duty is to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. It is one of the preeminent national obligation of all the citizens of India. India is a vast and diverse nation with different caste, religion, sex and linguistic people. If freedom and unity of the country are jeopardized, then united nation is not possible. Hence, in a way, sovereignty lies with the people. It may be recalled that these were first mentioned in preamble and also under 19(2) of the Fundamental Rights. Reasonable restrictions are permitted on fundamental freedom of speech and expression in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India. The next important duty of every Indian citizen is to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. Here I have added an inspiring video which will arouse patriotism among the Indian citizens. Yes, it is almost the duty of every Indian citizen to defend our country against external enemies. All the citizens are bound to be conscious of any such elements entering India, and also when in need they should be ready to take up arms to defend themselves. This duty is addressed to all the Indian citizens other than those belonging to Army, Navy and the Air Force. Often we have border clashes with China and Pakistan. In that situation, as Indians, we all must stand united, show our spirit, and we must cooperate with the government of India to fight against our enemies. We can help in any way. Either we can take up arms and join with our army people to fight against the enemies, or we can generate some fund. In any way, we all must be ready to render our support to the government and defend the country. The next important duty is to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic and regional or sectional diversities, and to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. In spite of diversities among people, the presence of one flag and single citizenship strengthens the spirit of brotherhood among the citizens. It states that people should rise against above narrow cultural differences and strive towards excellence in all spheres of collective activity. This duty makes a special mention in protecting the dignity of women. So each and every individual must respect women. The next duty is to value and preserve the rich heritage of the country's composite culture. India is known for its traditional rich cultural past. It is our duty to protect when we have inherited from past, preserve it and pass on to the future generations. India is also one of the most ancient civilizations of the world. Our contribution towards art, science, literature is well known to the world. Also, this land is birthplace of Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism and Sikhism. So it is the duty of every individual to protect the rich heritage of our land and pass on to the next generation. The next important duty is to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Yes, the natural resources are the most valued assets of our country. Hence, it is the duty of every citizen to protect it. Rising pollution, large-scale degradation of forests is causing immense harm to all the human lives on earth. Increasing natural calamities is a proof to it. It is also reinforced in other constitutional provisions under Article 48A and also in the Directive Principles of State Policy, which states that to protect and improve the environment and safeguard the forest and wildlife. So let us all take a oath to protect our natural environment. The eighth fundamental duty of an Indian citizen is to develop scientific temper, humanism and the spirit of inquiry and reform. It is a known fact that it is necessary to learn from the experiences and developments around the world for our own development. It is the duty of every citizen to protect and promote scientific temper and spirit of inquiry to keep pace with the fast-changing world. Let us all take Make in India projects and make India a manufacturing hub, and we can be in par with the developed nations. The ninth duty is to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. It is unfortunate that in a country which preaches non-violence to the rest of the world, we ourselves see from time to time incidents of senseless violence and destructions of public property. Among all the fundamental duties, this holds a great significance in current scenario when strike, protests, etc. have become a common phenomenon. Whenever there is a strike or bandh or rally, mob develops mentally to harm public properties like buses, buildings, and to loot them, and citizens who are protectors become mute spectators. So, let us all protect the public property. The 10th fundamental duty is to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavors and achievements. As responsible citizens, whatever work we take up should be directed towards achieving the goal of excellence so that our country constantly rises to a higher level of endeavors and achievement. This class has potential to not only regenerate and reconstruct the country but also to raise it to the highest possible level of excellence. The 11th fundamental duty that was added in the year 2002 by the 86th Constitutional Amendment is to provide opportunities for education to his child or ward between the age of 6 and 14 years. It is the duty of a parent or guardian to provide opportunities for education to his child, or as the case may be, ward between the age of 6 or 14 years. It was the recommendation of National Commission to review the working of Constitution to make education a fundamental right to all the children up to the age of 14. So, by the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act 2002, a free and compulsory education was legally enforceable fundamental right for all the children between 6 to 14 years of age. So these are the 11 important fundamental duties incorporated in the Indian Constitution. Now, let me tell you in what way these fundamental duties are important to each and every individual Indian citizen. The fundamental duties is a reminder to the Indian citizens about their duty towards society, fellow citizens and the nation. It is a warning to the citizens who are anti-national and anti-social activities. The fundamental duties inspire the citizens and promote a sense of discipline and commitment among them. The fundamental duties helps the courts in examining and determining the constitutional validity of law. All these fundamental duties are enforceable by law. These are the importance of fundamental duties. Now, let us see some facts about the fundamental duties. Generally, we can categorize the fundamental duties into moral duty and civic duty. What are the moral duties of an Indian citizen? Cherishing the noble ideals of the freedom struggle. And what are the civic duties? An Indian citizen must respect the constitution, national flag, national anthem. He or she has to protect the public property. He has to preserve the rich heritage, preserve the natural resources. All these can be the civic duty. And these duties, either moral or civic, it is just a codification of tasks which are integral to the Indian way of life. And these fundamental duties are confined only to the Indian citizens, and it does not extend to the foreigners, unlike few fundamental rights. The duties are non-justiciable similarly to directive principles of state policy, and there is no legal sanction against their violation. Now, let me make some of the observations of the fundamental duties that has been commented by various people. Few people are of opinion that these duties are misunderstood by the common people, and these duties are criticized for being moral precepts, pious platitudes, vague and repetitive. And few people are of opinion that there is no necessity to include fundamental duties because it is the duty of each and every individual to do that, even if it is not included. Others are of opinion that as because these fundamental duties are included, the fundamental rights has lost its value and significance. Few people have come out with opinion that these fundamental duties were incorporated based on the recommendations of Swaran Singh Committee, and the government has not considered few recommendations, namely the Parliament should impose penalty or punishment in case of non-compliance of duties. But if such duty is imposed, it cannot be called in question in any court on any ground. And the duty of paying tax was not included. Similarly, other important duties like family planning and voting are not included. So, these are some of the observations made by few people. But we are not here to criticize our constitution. Let me conclude by telling that unless the citizens of the country participate in the decision-making process of the government, all the efforts put forth by the government cannot be successful. Even the unstated duties like voting and payment of taxes can be effectively discharged by the citizens. The public-spirited people and the politicians must come forward to take interest in the local community problems. All these duties are a constant reminder to us of the national goals as well as the basic norms of political order. All these duties inspire us to inculcate in ourselves a sense of social responsibility. So let us all abide by the Indian Constitution, stay united and work for the betterment of a bright India. Jai Hind.